You're going to play Outer Wilds. No, I'm not giving you a choice. Alright, here's the deal. There's this game called Outer Wilds. It's available on everything but the Switch, can run on Steam's most common rigs, and is frequently on sale for the price of a nice meal. It's even Steam Deck verified. I can guarantee you own a machine capable of running it. But I get it. I don't know you, you don't know me. My word alone will never be enough to get you to buy something, even download something. For that, I gotta be sneaky, persuasive. I gotta make the product look real shiny without revealing any of the interesting bits, because again, you're going to play this game. You will find those bits for yourself, and you will like it. Anywho, the best way to talk about something without spoiling it is by discussing what's already blatantly obvious, the graphics. There are very few games that look like Outer Wilds. The closest examples of this style I can think of are Firewatch and Breath of the Wild. Looking at the Steam trading cards for the game, it's clear they drew a lot of inspiration from the old WPA posters the US Department of the Interior made to promote its national parks. It's pretty easy to find the through line with this style in Firewatch, being set in the real-life Shoshone National Forest, but in Outer Wilds the link is a lot less direct and a lot more interesting. The Arthians may not have bases on other planets with visitor centers and trails, but the way they decorated the observatory, you'd never know that. It's effectively a visitor center style museum of the whole solar system, showcasing local wildlife, geology, and historical artifacts. This aesthetic does wonders to reinforce the titular theme of Wilds, but in a way that feels charmingly idyllic. Because these old posters present a form of Wilds that doesn't really exist in real life. This game's landscape feels like they built a game around the exaggerated tales from the first expeditions into the American West, minus the indiscriminate slaughter of the native population, because the native population was already slaughtered by massive spoilers. Tornadoes that could tear islands from the ocean, anglerfish large enough to swallow ships whole, geysers strong enough to launch you into orbit. Don't these sound like tall tales expeditionaries would bring back from their journey to the New World? The focus on simplistic models and textures with crazy good lighting and shaders makes for a style that's easy on the eyes yet still incredibly functional. It's like the art director, Wesley Martin, had a That's So Raven vision of Babylon's Fall and swore to never use gradients ever again. The point is, the game's graphical style works on every level imaginable, including when... But we'll get there when we get there. This game isn't quite at the pants shooting stage yet. We're still on Timber Hearth, a planet that feels exactly as cozy as the name would suggest. You can roast a marshmallow around a campfire with your literally four-eyed friends. You can play hide-and-seek with the village troublemakers. You can chat with some space program vets about how cool it is that you get to go to space. And the soundtrack! Quick tangent, but the soundtrack in this game is incredible. You can listen to the whole thing online without spoiling yourself, but the way it's implemented is equally brilliant. Most of the time, there's ambient sounds of the environment, which is essential to how dynamic the world is. When you can get thrown into orbit or sucked into a black hole at any time, you need those audio cues to know when you're safe and when you need to leg it back to your ship. When the music finally kicks in, it means you're in a plot-important location and signals safety. Well, most of the time it does. The biggest exception will condition you so well hearing EFG will send chills down your spine. Similarly, hearing DGB after you beat the game will do the same thing for entirely different reasons. And on Timber Hearth, it's a plucky banjo tune that you'd hear around a campfire, only in this case the campfire is an entire planet, and the banjo is being played by the omnipresent god of this solar system, Andrew Prallo. The music is also incorporated diegetically and mechanically as a tool for finding the other travelers, even ones thought lost forever. Anywhere you are, you can always pull out your trusty signal scope and get a musical slice of home. Which is absolutely necessary because as much as Outer Wilds is a world filled to bursting with charm and camaraderie, it's also filled with, no exaggeration, the best cosmic horror ever presented in an interactive format. Cosmic horror games present an interesting paradox. On one hand, one of the hallmarks of the genre is how monumentally insignificant our choices as humans are, and giving the player a choice only to reveal how inconsequential that choice actually was can be a powerful experience, and oh hey, what's this Undertale footage doing here? On the other hand, a lot of you probably cringed at that little bit where I tried to tell you meaningless choices can be a good thing in games. The "but thou must" trope is so overused these days, the question must be asked, why present a choice to the player if their choices don't matter, and oh hey, what's this Deltarune footage doing here? Toby Fox's games in particular are fantastic at deconstructing metatextual questions like this, and are a big reason why Undertale and Deltarune are some of the most heavily discussed and analyzed games in the modern era. But most games don't do this for an overarching theme, they do it because of money. On a surface level, presenting choices can make the player feel a sense of agency, but it takes a lot of work under the hood to make sure every consequence of that choice is accounted for. So it's a lot easier and a lot cheaper to make those outcomes as similar as possible, and oh hey, what's this Pokemon footage doing here? Outer Wilds completely sidesteps this issue with its very nature as a game about a time loop. Every loop is another round of asking the game, but what if I did this, would that change the outcome? Up until the final loop, which can take hours and hours of dying and dying over and over and over again, the answer is no. You generally learn something new each loop, so it never stoops to tedium and frustration, but if you stop for even a second, take your eyes off the prize, and ignore your burning curiosity to question what you're doing, it gets real existential real fast. The player is shown just how insignificant they are at the end of every loop, whether you run out of oxygen in deep space, get eaten by the most horrifying 3D model ever rendered, or get every single internal organ crushed with sounds that'll make you squirm in your seat. It doesn't matter. Every time you wake up back at the campsite like nothing ever happened. There's no progression system, you're not barred from making a difference by your low level or poorly constructed character, you're given the keys to the kingdom on the very first loop, and the only thing stopping you from using them is you. You tiny, insignificant speck, only given this glimpse into your existence's futility by circumstances beyond your comprehension. It's quite easy to ignore all this with how comfortable this game manages to make the vacuum of space feel, but if you don't, it's a real trip. However, if you don't find existential horror all too compelling, that's fine. Outer Wilds has a little something for everyone, as long as that something is the most terrifying location ever put in a video game, aka a Space Bayou Halo ring. I'm literally just saying words at this point. And this ring is so cool from a technical perspective, because none of it is scripted. This isn't Super Mario Galaxy, where the gravity mechanics can be boiled down to lathering glue on Mario's souls. Outer Wilds' physics system is so comprehensive, it can simulate centrifugal force as a simulation of gravity without even being explicitly designed for it. The consistent rules that the game introduces creates a lot of moments that feel incredibly unique, like the emergent stuff that comes from Breath of the Wild's similarly consistent rule set. In that game, lightning strikes metal objects when you're in a thunderstorm, so if you're smart enough, you can figure out a strategy where you throw a metal boomerang at an enemy at just the right moment, causing lightning to strike exactly when the boomerang's arc intersects with the enemy. In Outer Wilds, this kind of puzzle solving is literally the only form of progression. You figure out how one thing works, apply that to another thing, and that leads to a revelation that you can use to figure out something else. And it's probably the best way a detective story can be gamified, by turning all the evidence into game mechanics and letting the player decide how to connect the dots. And seeing how that experience can only be enjoyed to its fullest if you aren't explicitly told how these mechanics interact with each other, it makes selling this game extremely difficult. The thing is, no matter how much I babble on about how much I love this game, your decision to play it is ultimately a leap of faith. A demonstration of how much you trust the people that recommended it to you. Granted, that's the case for every game, seeing as you can never truly spoil every aspect of the experience, and even free games require a time investment, but Outer Wilds takes that to the extreme. If you look in the comments of any video discussing the game, you'll find legions of fans looking back on the times before they beat it with great longing. Not because they regret their decision, but because they envy the fact that you can play Outer Wilds for the first time. And they can't. Not anymore. If you're fortunate enough to be able to do that, you owe it to yourself. You're going to play Outer Wilds, and no, I'm not giving you a choice.